Hello everyone, my name is Cody Pennant, and today we're going to analyze Fable the Lost Chapters. We're going to focus on spell implementation, more specifically player movement limitations, player animation, and spell spawning. The three types of spells we are going to cover are ranged, area of effect, and player modification. Let's start with ranged spells. Let's start with lightning. Observing the animation states it seems to only flow into one animation that blends with leg movement and back to standard movement when released. Looking at the player movement limitations, we can see that you can move at the standard rate of speed but have no control over rotation. You also cannot roll or evade. In regards to spell instantiation, you can see that the spell spawned from his left hand instantly when the ability is activated. Interestingly, the spell is triggered at the same time as the animation, so it appears as though the spell is firing early. The last thing to note is that you can cast the spell with your weapon out without having to put it away. The next spell on the list is Fireball. Starting with the animation for the spell, we can see there are two animation states for the spell, a charge state and a fire state. The charge state and the fire state both allow for standard movement and player rotation. No matter how fast you fire the spell, it will flow into a charge state and then into the fire state. Digging into the spell implementation itself, the particle effect and the actual fireball are two different things. The charged particle will grow, displaying damage PFI, but the fireball will always look and spawn the same. And as with lightning, this spell can be used with your weapon equipped. Moving on to AoE spells, let's go ahead and start with Inflame. Inflame is a very simple spell. This spell's animation contains only one state with no blending at all. When this spell is activated, the player movement is completely locked and all weapons are forced to be put away. When the spell is implemented, you can see a PFI firing that allows the player to see the damage area of the spell. Moving on to a much more complicated spell, Divine Fury. This spell has two animations in its entirety, a charge state and a fire state. The first state will charge the spell up for a specific amount of time, and the second state will release the spell. Both states are completely timer driven. Once the timer is up for one, it'll activate the other. Both states lock the player movement and disable all your weapons. The oddity to this spell is that it can be cancelled at any time in the charge state, but once you hit the fire state, you are locked into completing the spell. Lastly, the PFI displayed shows the area of damage when the spell is triggered. Moving on to our last category, player modification spells. The first spell on this list is the shield spell. When the shield spell is active, it will show a blue aura around the player, and there are no animations of the spell and 0 player limitations when using it. The last spell on our list is a heal spell. This spell is very much like the shield spell where there are no limitations that take place and has a 0 effect on player movement weapons. This spell does have an active timer and will heal you over the amount of time that it is active. Other than the health bar adjustments, the player is informed by this action by an aura that surrounds the player like a shield when spawned. So let's go ahead and summarize what we learned today. Attack spells tend to be quick, one-handed, without limiting the player's weapon availability, as well as allowing movement for more fluid combat. Area of effect spells tend to limit the player the more powerful they are. Movement will be stopped and the player's weapons will be disabled for the duration of the spell. Lastly, the player modification spells seem not to impede the player in any way, leaving complete movement freedom. Thank you for watching.